I'm going to be showing you the top 10 makeup mistakes, and I think it's pretty obvious what side is the mistakes. But in case you weren't sure, this is the mistake side and this is the correct side. Now I'm going to be showing you what not to do and the correct way of doing your makeup. In case you're new to my channel, I'm NINAUBHI, I'm a professional makeup artist and I travel the world for celebrities and VIPs, but I'm based in Dubai. Now let's get straight into this video. As you can see, we're all set. We've got the hair scraped back, we're ready to go, and we're starting with skin. So we're gonna be doing all of the mistakes here and the correct way of doing makeup here. So let's get started with skin. I don't have anything on at the moment. I'm gonna start with the wrong side. So this is where we're going to be doing the mistakes. And the first mistake is not applying your eye cream or a primer. So I'm not going to be applying anything here other than my moisturizer. I'm just going to apply my Road Barrier Restore cream. And like I said, I'm not going to be applying my eye cream here. I'm going to go ahead and apply this to the correct side. So I've got my Drunk Elephant Ceramite AF eye cream and I'm going to be applying this just along the eye contour here. There is going to be a massive difference with the result of everything because of the fact that we haven't actually applied eye cream. Everything's going to look a little bit more crepey. It's going to be looking a little bit more kind of dry, and you're going to see those fine lines a bit more obviously. By not applying a primer on this side, another thing that's going to happen is you don't have that kind of barrier between your skincare and your makeup. I'm going to be honest, back in the day, and even on clients to be honest, I never used to kind of like always use primer. I use it now most of the time, and the reason for that is because I feel like I need something there in between the moisturizer and the makeup. A lot of the time I don't feel like you actually need a primer, but I still like to have something there just because it's just something in between, and I feel like I'm not letting the makeup kind of like disturb the moisturizer. I'm letting the moisturizer get to work. And I also do feel like depending on if you need a primer, like you might need a blurring primer, you might need an extra hydrating primer, like that's going to help your skin as well and help the kind of longevity of your makeup as well. So I'm not going to apply any of that here. I'm going to apply it on the other side. I'm using my Laura Mercier Pure Canvas Blurring Primer, and we're just going to smooth this over, and this is going to create a really nice kind of barrier and also just smooth the face so that, you know, it just, I mean, I can already see a difference there. This is one of those primers I feel like really does make a difference to the skin even before you apply your foundation. I'm also not going to prep my lips on this side, and the way that I do prep my lips, which I'm going to do on the correct side, is actually by using the Dior Lip Maximizer. And this isn't saying that you have to use a lip maximizer. It's just saying that you should hydrate your lips before you actually go in. Your lips is the same way, you know, it's the same as the rest of your skin. You really want to prep it, prime it, make sure it is kind of hydrated and everything before you go in with any makeup. So I've applied it on this side and we've got nothing on this side. Honestly, even just the way your skin is going to feel is crazy. Like your skin is going to feel super hydrated. You're not going to feel like a prune, whereas on this side I feel like you're really going to feel super dry. So having done that, let's now move on to the next step, which is concealing and contouring. Now I personally love to underpaint a lot, and that's what I'm going to be showing you today because it honestly is so easy, but there is a right and wrong way of doing it. So we're going to start with the mistakes side, and what I'm really going to be focusing on is showing you why you end up still having those dark circles even after applying concealer, because there is a technique. So this is all about the way that you contour your face, how you're sculpting, but also how you are concealing certain areas. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Guerlain Terracotta Concealer in 2.5N, and firstly we're not going to be applying any concealer on the eyelid, and that is a big mistake in itself because applying concealer to your eyelid actually does help you to prep your eyelids almost. So like you hear a lot of people talking about primer. Well, this is your version of a primer. This is going to really help to even your skin tone and just act as a really good base for any kind of eye makeup that you're doing later on. So we're not going to be applying it here, and here I'm going to be just doing what I've seen a lot of people do, and I understand less is more, guys. I totally get it, but when it comes to covering dark circles and just trying to brighten certain areas, you still do need to apply a decent amount, you know, you still do need to apply it, you know, don't go super heavy handed with it, you know, but also don't under conceal as well at the same time. So I'm just going to apply it there and leave it as that, and we're not going to be applying this anywhere else on the mistake side. I'm going to be getting my beauty blender right now, and I'm just going to kind of buff this in just here. I see people apply their concealer and it's just never enough. I can just tell you right now, by the way, guys, this feels awful. Just buffing the concealer in right now, knowing that I've just got moisturizer and there's no eye cream and there's nothing else going on here. It feels horrible. I cannot even begin to tell you how much of a difference it makes prepping and priming your skin before you actually apply anything. So we've buffed that in, and as you can see, you've still got the dark circle there. That hasn't really done a lot. So I feel like that is, you know, a mistake that a lot of people make when they're just not applying enough. You know, there's a fine line there. Now I'm going to take a dark shade. You can use a contour stick or you can use a concealer. I'm going to be using the NARS Radiant Concealer in Cocoa, and I'm going to sculpt this side. So this is the wrong way again. We're sticking with the mistake side, and this is the wrong way of concealing contouring your face. So firstly, your light shade of concealer, which you use to conceal things, and your dark shade, which is either your contour stick or your dark concealer, always work hand in hand when it comes to sculpting, like contouring. So they help each other out. So by not kind of, you know, letting them work together, it's not actually going to give you the best effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of like do what I've seen when I've seen some people put their makeup on, and it's placement as well as the amount. I just already feel like this is just so horrendously wrong, but the aim of the game here is to actually help you out. So we're gonna make sure that you don't do this anymore. Okay, so let's have a look at this. The mistake, obviously the amount, there's way too much of that dark product here, but also the placement is just so off. There's too much of it here, and that's not really doing anything. You know, the placement is kind of right, but it's not. It's like a little bit too far forward. There's too much of a gap here. It needs to blend into your hairline. The placement here is so wrong because a cheekbone that low is not really the correct placement, and it's not balancing everything out. Here we've got the dark shade way too far up. It should be beneath the jawline, not above. But we're gonna blend this in now. Now I'm using my Hollywood complexion brush, and I'm just gonna, as you can see, this is another thing that really shows you how wrong things go, because the minute you start blending, it just is way too, it's like very muddy. And I'm not gonna blend this down into the jawline because this is the mistake side, and you really need to ensure that you do blend down. So, okay, that is done there. Now I'm gonna move on to the correct side. Now this is the correct way to conceal and contour. We're gonna go back to that Guerlain concealer, and I am gonna firstly do my eyelid, and that is gonna really help to prime that area. So we're just gonna buff this in to the eye area, and you're gonna see that this evens out my skin tone on my eye area, and it actually makes that dark circle beneath look so much brighter, even just by doing the eyelid. So next, I am gonna apply this right here, and what we're gonna do is just do a little line there, and what that's doing is it's gonna actually help to cover up that darkness. And we're also gonna just lift here, and you can see it's actually not that like that much, but we're also gonna apply a little bit in other areas, because like I said earlier, the correct way to contour is for your light shade and your dark shade to work together, and this is them working together. So we're gonna go along here. Anywhere else you want to apply it is actually completely up to you. You could apply it on your forehead if you want to. We're gonna go ahead and just apply a small amount. And yeah, that's about it, I think, where we kind of want it. I am going to go ahead and blend this. So I'm using the same brush. It's actually a different brush, but it's the same, you know, type of brush. And I'm just buffing that in. Can you see how that's kind of like disappeared, but it's still brightened that whole area? And here we're going to do the same thing. We're keeping it in the same place, but we are making sure it blends into the skin nicely. There you go. Now this is where we're really gonna make sure we don't go too far up into the lower lash line, because it's gonna look a bit kind of mask-like. It's really about focusing on this area here, that groove that really makes the dark circle look super dark. And you can see how much that has brightened it up. I mean, already. And then this bit here is more so to lift. This is helping with the contour. I am really happy with that. We've got really nice coverage there, and I feel like everything's pretty even. We're now going to move on to the dark shade, and this is me showing you how to apply your contour correctly so that it kind of meets your concealer contour kind of hand in hand. So now we're going to be applying a little bit here. I'm going to talk through this after with you. Okay, same amount, like same places that we've applied it roughly, but there's a huge difference in terms of how much we've applied and the placement of it. So we've applied it up here, and this is just going to help to really lift that area, but also because I feel like my face is quite round, so I like to kind of slim down that forehead area. Now here we've started at the top of the ear, and it's gradually going in, and it's not too low, and you can see I haven't gone too far in, because when you start blending, as you saw on this side, everything basically starts kind of spreading, and that's when things can get a little bit messy, because you're like, okay, this is just looking way too much. So always start small, because don't forget, and this is so important guys, the blending spreads product, so everything will look a lot bigger and a lot darker after you've blended. So you always want to start small. So that's why we finish it here, because I know when I start blending I'm naturally going to be able to push it in. Then here we've gone underneath the jawline, and this is going to be blended in a different way as well, because the whole aim here is to create a kind of shadow underneath the jawline to make it look a little bit more snatched. Now we're going to go here and we're going to blend, and we're going to keep everything in the same place. We're trying not to kind of make everything look bigger. Look at the difference between that and that. That just looks like a bruise, to be honest. Now here it's the same thing. We really want to keep it in the same place, and we want to gradually kind of take this in. Can you see how we're like being a bit more strategic with our blending, but also it's the amount that we applied. Now here, this is where we're really going to drag this down, because what we want it to do is to create a gradient effect so that it all looks like a shadow. If you don't blend it down into the neck, what happens is it just looks like a stripe. It just looks like a line there, and that's it, and that looks so bad. Honestly, I've seen it a million times. It looks so bad. Like here, we haven't blended it down, so it's going to look really, really bad. So here, it looks like a shadow now. So it's actually made the jawline look sharper and just look a little bit more snatched. Now that you can see how we've actually concealed and contoured the face with the mistake side and the correct side, we're going to move on to the next one, which is foundation. Now I'm going to be using my Haus Labs foundation in 300 medium neutral. So I'm going to use the same foundation on both sides, but I'm going to show you how much of a difference it makes, like how you apply it and how much you apply. The previous mistake, like the concealing and the contouring, is really going to come into effect now too, because obviously you can see the mistake here. You can see quite clearly that this is wrong and this is correct, but it also does make a difference with how your foundation looks. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a pump on the back of my hand, and we're going to start with the mistakes side. And this is where I'm going to use a brush to apply, and that in itself is a big no-no, because if you are underpainting, which is basically applying your concealer, contour, everything underneath your foundation, then you don't want to go over with a brush, because what you're doing is you're actually distorting everything that you've just done, and you're kind of just blending everything together. So you really need to make sure that you don't use a brush with underpainting, and also you don't apply too much. We're going to go with a full pump of foundation on this side. So there's quite a few different mistakes in one that you're going to see, like how much of the foundation you're using, and also using a brush and the way of applying it as well. So we're going to use that whole pump, and when you're underpainting, you cannot apply too much foundation on top. You've got to use a kind of sheer to light to medium coverage foundation. You can't use a full coverage foundation. This isn't full coverage, but I'm going to apply a lot of it so you can really see how it just ends up covering everything up. You know, sometimes I receive comments from people saying, yeah, but with underpainting, doesn't the foundation just cover everything up? Yes, if you use the wrong type of coverage and if you use too much of it. The whole point is so that underpainting can be like, it's a veil of color on top which just ties everything together, but it's a soft focus effect, and you're going to see that on this side. But let's get started with the mistakes. I've got my brush, which is my Sigma F85 brush, one of my favorite brushes for actually applying foundation with a brush, but as I said, for this technique, using a brush is a no-no. Now we're going to just go straight in, and I'm just going to apply it how you would normally apply a kind of foundation, which is kind of like buffing it in. Hopefully you've seen what I mean. Again, patchy. You can see the darkness even around here, around there. It just looks very bruised, and there's no point in it, you know, there was no point, and you can still see the darkness around the eye area too. Okay, moving on to the correct side. Now this is where we're going to be using our sponge. This is the best way to apply your foundation on top of your underpainting. We've got a damp beauty blender. We're going to take some of that foundation, spread it over the sponge. We're going to make sure there's not too much on the sponge when we first go in, and we're going to slowly buff a small amount of it in, not a lot. We really just want a veil of color. And you're going to see how this just gives you a really nice soft focus effect. And I really do love how when you underpaint like this, like everything shows through, like that really nice kind of soft focus effect of the contour underneath really comes through. I mean, can we just talk about this side? Look at the sculpting. It's not over the top, it's not in your face, there's shape to the face now. Whereas here, there is literally no shape. It's just like a blob. Having applied the foundation, we are now going to move on to the next mistake, which is your powder. So let's talk about the wrong way and the correct way of applying your powder. So I'm going to be using my Makeup Forever Ultra HD powder in Light Banana. Now the first mistake is not applying powder over your foundation. Your foundation, your whole base is just not going to stay put. Not that I'd really want that to stay put anyway on this side, but it's just not going to stay put because you've got nothing to lock it in. You've got to look at your powder as something that just locks in everything. So that's the finishing step to make sure that all that hard work doesn't go anywhere and it stays looking fresh throughout the day. Now, obviously it does depend on the type of powder you use. I'm not going to lie, this is not just about technique. It is about using the right quality powder too. There are certain makeup products that I feel doesn't really matter on the, you know, when it comes to the quality, and it is more about the technique. But there are certain things that you use which, yes, the quality of the product is just as important as the technique that you use too. So I would say this is a very good powder because it is very ultra fine, so it doesn't kind of like, it's not so ultra fine that it just you know, it just goes up and you're just like, where did that go? It's like, it's not that ultra fine that you can't see it and that you can't use it to be able to pack it on and really set your makeup, but it is not that kind of like chunky either that it gives you a cakey finish. It really does stay put. This is one of my favorite powders. So I'm going to go ahead and get a powder puff. I'm using my Beauty Blender powder puff, and I am just going to dip into this powder here and show you the correct way, because obviously the wrong way is not applying any powder. So first thing we want to do here is make sure that we don't have any creases. So we're going to get rid of the crease on the eyelid first, because otherwise you're just basically setting creases. I'm going to dust that powder off, so I've just pressed it on. Same thing, I'm going to get rid of the creases underneath. And we're going to go back into that powder. And we're just going to press there, see that? Now we're going to do this just on areas that we feel like kind of get shiny through the day. It's up to you, you can even apply it everywhere if you wanted to, but I'm good with that. Now I'm going to go into, with my brush, like into that powder and just kind of like dust it over the cheeks. See, I didn't really press it in there. And just dust off everything else. I'm not applying any extra powder here. I'm just dusting off what we've applied. Very lightly, skimming the face with the brush. And now that whole area is set. Now that we've locked everything in, we're going to move on to the next mistake, which is brows. Okay, so we're going to start with the mistakes side, and this is where brows are just way too dark and way too drawn in. And I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Brow Blade in Dark Drapes. And the thing is, I want to show you like how you can still use that same color on the other side, but it not look so kind of like dark. It has a lot to do with your pressure as well. Now I am going to be using a pencil, so I'm going to go straight in and start kind of like shading my brow. And the mistake I see happen often is people applying way too much product at the front of the brow. This is the area that should be actually the lightest, like not have as much product on. Now also, I am following the shape of my brow, And I'm just kind of making it thicker wherever I want to make it thicker. Okay, I mean, I just feel like this is very, I mean, I don't even think I need to say anything, right? I just feel like you can tell this is way too dark. This is like just ridiculous. Okay, so that obviously is wrong type of brow. Okay, so we're going to move on to the other brow. Now the first thing I'm going to do before I even actually use any pencil is use a product to help kind of like keep my brows in place, and I'm using my Urban Decay Slick Brow Day, and I really like this because this is the one kind of brow wax gel thing that I've used that actually doesn't leave a white kind of cast on your brows, and it really does stay in place. It's a very good product, and I just like to kind of like use my finger to really press them in place so that it stays put. Okay, so I'm going to use the other side of the pencil now, which is the pen side. And the reason I'm using that first is because I want to replicate the hairs first. Because if I can try and replicate hairs as much as possible so it leaves me having to use the pencil side at a bare minimum, then that would be amazing. Because the minute you start drawing in pencil, your brows are going to end up looking a lot heavier. And I find that with me, replicating the hairs just is another way of making my not so thick and fluffy brow look a little bit more natural, because I feel like when you have thinner brows and they're a bit more sparse, it's really hard to have them look natural. So this is what I like to do. So I'm going to use my pen and just kind of like basically replicate the hairs. And this pen is very good because it's actually so thin. It just doesn't look too heavy. I mean, already look at the front of that brow. That is how it should be, much lighter. And you can go either all the way across, or you can kind of like finish just the front section and then draw in the rest. I'm gonna just draw through to the rest because, like I said, if I can try and use this more and not have to actually use the pencil, that would be great. I actually cannot get over the difference. That's crazy, right? So we're gonna go ahead and use a pencil now. We're gonna just let that dry for a second because I always like to leave a little bit of a gap, otherwise the pen is still kind of drying. I mean, seriously, I haven't even put the pencil on yet, and look how much better that looks. It's just more natural and it's lighter. Okay, so let's go in with the pencil now, and this is where unfortunately I have to use a pencil in certain areas because I'm just so sparse in certain areas that a pen just isn't going to cut it. So this is where I just kind of like draw in a few other hairs, and this is where like I don't go like that like I did on the other side. I just kind of like replicate the hairs. I think I'm kind of like done with that. I mean, look at the difference. Considering I've used the same color, it really doesn't look as dark as that kind of mistake side of the brow. So now that the brows are kind of done, and definitely done on this side, we're going to move on to the next mistake, which is part of the eyes. So we're going to be applying an eyeshadow, and I'm going to be using my Makeup by Mario Master Matte, the Neutrals palette, and I'm going to be using my Refa 01 brush and the shade 8. And this is where I'm going to be working on the mistake side. So I'm literally going into this color and then going straight in. Biggest mistake, big no, because what you're doing is you're just going straight in with a whole load of color, and it's going to look very patchy because you've immediately gone in with color that hasn't even been kind of like tapped or anything, or the excess hasn't been taken out. And yeah, it just is wrong. And also this, what I'm doing right now, going back and forth and not thinking about what you're doing and how you're applying it and how much product you have on the brush makes a massive difference. I mean, just going back and forth like that, because I didn't actually take the excess off. Look at all of this. Now, how would you blend that? This is where you start stressing out and you're like, okay, I need to put my brush here. because I need to blend it. But then the minute you go there, the color goes up more. And then you're like, okay, I need to blend this bit here. But what you're not realizing is there is so much color on this brush and you've got so much product there, you cannot blend even more because it's just gonna go everywhere. So that in itself is a big no. Now the other thing is, I'm gonna use a smaller brush. I'm just kind of guessing that whoever's making the mistakes will use the right brush, because there are so many different mistakes that you could make along the way. This is the Refa 14 Mini. I'm going to go into shade 10, and that's like a dark brown. Again, not tapping off the product. And I'm going to go underneath my eye. Like, I'm trying to go close to the... It's really difficult for me because obviously I naturally try and do it the right way, because that's what I do day in, day out. But if you're going to use a dark shade underneath, it's gonna look bad if you don't do it in the right way. Firstly, if you don't tap the excess off. Secondly, if you have gone too dark with that color as well. As you can see, it's just not looking right at all, and you get all the product that spills underneath and probably ends up making your dark circle look way worse. Now, I'm gonna wipe off all the products from those brushes on my tissue here, and we're gonna move over. Right, next up is we're gonna apply some mascara. Now, the mistake here is not curling your lashes. I'm gonna go straight in with the mascara, and you're gonna be gobsmacked at how much of a difference it is compared to the other side. I'm gonna go straight in, and there's a couple of mistakes. One mistake is we're not using a eyelash curler, right? We're not curling the lashes before applying mascara. Second one is I'm not going from the root of the lash. I'm just touching the tips. And the problem with this is people think they're applying mascara in the right way, but you know, you're just kind of like touching the tips because maybe you don't want to go too close to the eyes. It ends up looking horrible. They're just straight. They're not kind of like, nothing's going on with them. And let's go and apply it on the lower lashes. And this is where we're actually doing the opposite. We are touching the root of the lash and we're really getting in there. And the problem there is what you're doing is you're touching it so closely, and because it's the bottom of the eye, it looks a little bit more delicate than the upper lash. You're getting that spidery effect, and then it becomes too heavy on the lower lash line. So that is the first mistake when it comes to the eyes there. Now moving on to the correct way of doing things, we're going to do it on the right side here, and I'm going to use that same brush, same color that I used. And what I'm going to do now is I've tapped into this product. I'm going to tap onto a tissue a couple of times to get the excess off. And this is where we're now going to apply this to the lid. Look at the difference. Right? And I'm going to apply it in a very simple way. This isn't about this isn't about the style of eyeshadow here. This is just about kind of applying eyeshadow in general. So I am going to keep the whole kind of, you know, eyeshadow look pretty simple. Now, I'm patting it. That's another thing. I'm not going back and forth. But even if I did want to go back and forth, I could, because there's not a lot of product on here. So I'm patting it all over the eyelid, so it's not patchy. We've got a nice kind of even color over the lid. Now, if you do want to go back and forth, we can. We've got minimal product on this brush, hardly any. We've actually tapped off quite a few times before we went into the skin. And I'm actually just kind of like skimming on the skin. I'm not pressing too hard. I mean, look how much, like, this is just so soft in comparison, and we're just taking it out there, much softer, right? And you can even go in with a bit more product if you want to. And we're tapping again. There you go. I'm going to go in with that smaller brush, and I'm going to go in with the same color I just used. I personally would not go darker. I would stick to the same one, and I'm patting all the color off, and I'm going to focus on going right into the lashes, like the root. So I'm just going back and forth with the smallest amount of product. And look at the difference that makes. We've still got the product on the lower lash line, but it isn't crazy. It doesn't look like I've just had an accident. You know, it just looks normal. So moving on, we're going to curl the lashes. So we're going to get these lash curlers right into the root. And I'm using my Kevin O'Quar lash curlers because they honestly are the best lash curlers ever. They don't pinch your skin at all. Pumping action, and done. Now we're going to go and use the same mascara, which was the YSL Lash Clash mascara, and I am going to really kind of wriggle the brush into the root and really kind of like go through the lashes for this. And the difference is crazy compared to the other side, and then just kind of like dragging it through. So you're not just touching the tips, you're really kind of getting into the lash. But there is a fine line. You do want to also make sure that you're not kind of touching the skin too much. And you also want to make sure that you look down so that you've got less chance of that brush kind of like touching your eyelid or your lashes touching your eyelid. I mean, look at the difference. Look at these lashes compared to the other side. Like, they're just nice and curled. They actually look good. Now, when it comes to the lower lashes, this is where I don't want to touch the root. I don't want those spidery kind of lashes. This is where I am actually going to touch the tip a bit more. And that is that eye done. I mean, look at the difference. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? It's like just being a little bit light-handed, and your application, your pressure, how much product you use, whether you take the excess off, whether you curl your lashes, it makes a massive difference. This is just something that I could go out and not have anyone look at me like I'm crazy. This is just pure craziness going on. Now that we look crazy and normal, we're gonna move on to the next mistake, which is bronzer. I'm gonna be using my Fenty Beauty Sunstalker bronzer in Private Island, and I've got my BK Beauty 106 brush, and I am applying this on the mistake side first. Now, something that I hear a lot is a lot of people talking about, oh, you know, bronzer should be used for where the sun hits you on your face, and that's about it, and you can't use it as a contour. There's a right and wrong way of doing it. Well, I know it's pretty ironic that I've got a mistakes video up right now, and I'm telling you that, you know, there is a right way and a wrong way, but I think it's pretty obvious from looking at this that this is the wrong way. When it comes to bronzer, there isn't a kind of like, there isn't a set box that you can only use it for. Like, you can still use it to contour. You can use it for whatever you want to use it. It's really about your placement and about how much you apply and where you, like, you know, how much your kind of your technique in blending it and your application as well. It doesn't mean that you cannot use this for sculpting or contouring. If anything, I personally would recommend using a bronzer for that, because you are likely to get a nicer kind of slightly warmer finish, and it looks really good in any light. Whereas when you're using a actual contour product, which tend to be quite gray, when you look in certain lights, it doesn't look very flattering on the skin, you know, because rather than looking like a shadow, it can end up looking just grey and dirty. So that's why I would suggest always using a bronzer. It is completely up to you. It also does make a difference on your skin tone as well. Like, you can't necessarily use a super warm bronzer if you are very cool toned. Like, if you're, you know, if it just looks orange on you, then it isn't going to work for you. So you do need to think about the tone, the undertone of the bronzer. I'm going to apply it just where the sun would hit me, and that's it. And this is hopefully going to show you why that kind of advice from people about only applying bronzer in that way and that there is no other way to apply it, you know, doesn't always work, and hopefully you'll be able to see from this. So I'm just going to go ahead, get into my bronzer like this, and where the sun would hit me, I mean, let's be honest, if I'm out in the sun, it's kind of hitting me on the peaks of my face, kind of like everywhere, right? So I'm going to go ahead and firstly apply it all over my forehead here. You know, and obviously there's such thing as too much as well. But I'm gonna do this how I've seen people apply bronzer, who think that it's just about applying it where the sun hits you and that's it. I have literally seen this, like, it's just literally just, you know, like, there's no kind of like understanding of what you're doing. If I'm looking at my cheeks, and if I think about when I tan as well, like, it's usually this area here and my forehead, right? And maybe my nose a little bit, but you know, it's mainly that area. So I'm going to stick to that, because, you know, the sun isn't going to really hit me as much there. So I'm going to stick to these areas, and hopefully this shows you why that isn't always going to work. That is the wrong way. I'm going to move over to the correct side. Now I am going to change my brush here, and the reason being, I love this BK Beauty brush, by the way, it's absolutely amazing, but I do feel that I notice when people want to use a bronzer to apply it in a way where the sun hits you, they do tend to use a round kind of big brush. And I want to show you how, if you change your brush, the shape of it, and you actually apply it differently, then it can make a huge difference and it can make it look way better. So I'm going to use my Refa 18 brush. It's a little bit more kind of dome shape, and I'm going to go into my bronzer here, pat it once on the back of a tissue, and now this is where I'm actually going to apply it in a way where it is more the perimeter of the face. So I'm kind of focusing on going into the hairline as opposed to kind of like just wherever. And I feel like this will also give me that nice bronze effect without it looking crazy. This is the only way I can describe this, crazy. So I am kind of like applying it along the perimeter, applying it kind of where I contoured here, but a little bit above. And then also just go around here as well, because it just warms up my face a bit. And sometimes with anything left on the brush, I kind of go under the eye here a little bit, because I feel like it warms it up so it doesn't look so white in case my concealer is looking a little bit white. See how that has warmed up my face, but it also doesn't look ridiculous like that. Now that we've done that, we're going to move on to the next mistake, which is blush. When it comes to your blush, I don't recommend using a liquid blush on top of a matte finish, like when you've really powdered down your foundation, because it can really ruin everything underneath. It doesn't really sit well. But we are going to be using a liquid blush here today, because the reason being is because I haven't gone crazy with powder on this side, and I feel like slowly my oils have come through. If I was to apply it immediately after applying powder, it can look a little bit kind of crazy, but we've let it kind of sit for a while. My oils have come out and it's just looking a little bit more lived in, and it's not so ultra matte. So we're going to be using a liquid blush, and I'm going to be using the Huda Beauty blush filter in Watermelon Pop. And I am applying this on this side first, and really we're going to just kind of apply this here. Now I've got a beauty blender that I usually use for liquid blush. I mean, that is way too much, right? It's just, hopefully you can actually see it because I can. But yeah, this is more so about your placement and how much people apply. It's a bit way too much, like. And then people end up getting to the point where they're like, I've applied too much now what do I do? It's just way too much. So anyway, that's wrong, clearly. We're gonna go ahead and apply this to the other side, but this time I'm not applying it directly, because if you have powdered your face, even if your natural oils have come through, I don't really want to apply liquid immediately, like straight onto it. I'm gonna apply this to the back of my hand. I'm gonna then get my sponge, buff into the liquid blush. And this is a good trick for those of you who have got a matte finish. And we're gonna very lightly apply this a bit higher up on the cheekbone. See the difference by not applying it directly onto the skin? It's just so much more kind of like diffused, and it's much easier to kind of like play around with the color and just kind of decide where you actually want it. And I'm really happy with that. Massive difference. So don't always go in with your applicator directly on the skin. Always kind of like think about applying it to the back of your hand, buffing it into a sponge first, and then going in onto your face. With that being said, let's move on to the next mistake, which is highlighter. I'm going to be using the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Multi Glow Beautifying All Over Glow Highlighter. Honestly, the names just seriously bore me now. I just really need something which is short. Just keep it short, because I never know what part of it to actually say. But this shade is Dreamlight. This is a really pretty highlighter. It's just, did I say highlighter? It's a really pretty highlighter. It's just got like a few different colors in there. Okay, starting with the mistake side. This is just a really obvious one for me. I'm gonna use my Sigma F35 brush. We're gonna go into this product here. Again, we're not tapping any product off, which we should be doing. And we're just gonna go right up here. And I see this all the time. And it's the worst thing that you can do, because all it's doing is highlighting any flaws that you have and any kind of like bits in the skin that you really don't want to see. Like my skin is not the smoothest there, and it's just not looking good. It just looks like a stripe. It looks awful. So that is the wrong way of applying it there. Now we're going to move over to the other side, and this is where I'm going to get product again, but now I'm going to take it off on the back of a tissue. Just keep patting it. And here, we're not going to go all the way across. We're just going to stick to this bit here. Literally just this bit here. That's it. Enough that we can get a bit of a glow if we move in that light. Highlighter is not there for you to see it no matter what the light is, no matter what light is hitting your face. Highlighter is there for you to see it in certain angles. It's like you just move and it gives you a three-dimensional effect. It shouldn't be there no matter what, you know, whether I'm in daylight, whether I'm in darkness, whether like you shouldn't still be able to see it. It should just be when you turn and you get a glimmer of something, and it highlights the peaks of your face. That's all you want it for. Now that we've given ourselves a crazy and a good glow, let's move on to the next mistake, which is lips. Okay, so there's a lot that you could do wrong here. We are going to be using the Huda Beauty Lip Contour in Warm Brown. And we're going to do the mistake side first. And this is where, do you remember we actually did prime the lips before? There's nothing on here, so it's going to be really kind of like dry and feel horrible to me. But we are going to be going over the lip and completely overlining. And what's it going to look like, guys? You guessed it. It's going to look crazy. God, I see this a lot too. And this is crazy that I actually still see this on some people, where you can, even on TV, you can see it. You can actually see the real lip line, and then you can see like a whole kind of, you know, a whole, like, I don't know, like so much far above. You can see that there's the lip, like the lip liner they've applied, and it's just really obvious. Okay, I mean, that is just completely wrong, right? Way overdrawn, and I'm even trying to do it where it doesn't look like a kid's done it. You know, I'm trying to make it so that it, you know, it's possible for people to actually do that. Now we're going to apply a little bit of a lipstick. I'm going to apply my Anastasia Lip Velvet in Peachy Nude. There you go. Okay, let's move on to the right side now. Now what we want to do is we still want to overline a little bit, because you can still do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about how you do it. We're going to focus on touching your actual lip line, and you're going to literally go a tiny bit, not above it, but kind of on the upper part of your lip line. Because what you don't want is for it to look like you've gone right above your lip line. When looking at me, you should still be able to see, okay, it's maybe she's you know, I can't tell that she's overlined her lips, but it's not really giving me, I can't see skin in between all that lip line. I can just see her actual lip line. I mean, if you want to go this big, you might as well just go and get lip filler or something, honestly. I'm going to go in with a little bit of lipstick now. And I'm not going all the way to the edges, because I want to show you, you can use your finger to just pat. You don't always have to use a lip brush either. You can use your finger to just make it look a little bit more lived in. With that being said, guys, we've come to the end of this video. As you can see, we have the mistake side, which is pretty crazy. That's literally the only way that I can label that. And then you have this side, which just looks normal. It looks pretty. It looks blended. It looks like I, you know, haven't dipped my face in makeup. It just looks normal. It looks like it's not scary, right? And hopefully you can see the difference. And I'm really hoping this has helped you. Don't forget that I do have an online publication called the Beauty Breakfast Club, which basically is an online publication, and there's two versions of that. You've got one which is free, which gives you access to most of the site. The other is paid, but it only costs you around a coffee a month. That is literally it. You get access to all of the articles. Everything is written by me. We have 3 articles a week. We've got special articles for you paid guys as well, because it's pretty insane. It's like really in-depth kind of like information that you might want to know about beauty. It's primarily about beauty. We also get a room where we can chat. It's really cool. So please do show your support and subscribe. I would really appreciate it, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments box below. Don't forget, everything is listed in my description, so you can just head on over, click on the link, and it will take you straight to the products. I've really enjoyed doing this video today. I haven't done one of these for a long time. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so that you never miss any of my future videos. Until the next video, take care, and I'll see you soon.